March is Sleep Awareness Month, the perfect time to think about the quality of your sleep and how the mattress you choose can make all the difference. Avocado Green Mattress is committed to providing mattresses that not only help you sleep better, but also are healthier for you and the planet. Avocado mattresses promote better sleep through breathable, naturally temperature-regulating materials, which can improve overall well-being. No harmful chemicals, just healthy materials for a cleaner, safer sleep. And best yet, Avocado's committed to sustainability. Their mattresses are made from organic, eco-friendly materials that are good for both you and the planet. Plus, their mattresses are built to last, keeping more mattresses out of the landfill. Isn't it time to upgrade your mattress for you and the planet? Head to avocadomattress.com today and save up to 10% on certified organic mattresses. Dream of better.
Could your daily routine be full of hormone disruptors? There are more than 1,000 hormone disruptors living rent-free in our environment right now. In our food, our water, the air we breathe, the clothes we wear, our skincare, they all mess with our hormones. The good news is we don't have to suffer through it anymore because now we have Hormone Harmony, a formula made only with herbal ingredients that are shown to reduce hormonal symptoms of women of all ages. Since I've been using Hormone Harmony, I have felt more balanced, and other women feel the same way. The biggest benefit, they say, is feeling like myself again. That's what women mention over and over in their reviews, and there are over 30,000 reviews for Hormone Harmony. For a limited time, you can get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com. Just use the code DATEABLE at checkout. That's happymammoth.com and use the code DATEABLE for 15% off today.
Hi, I'm Yue Xu.
And I'm Julie Krafchick.
We're active daters turned dating insiders.
Here to dive into everything modern dating and relationships.
Welcome to DATEABLE. Hello, friends.
Welcome back to another episode of DATEABLE.
We're always dateable. You're dateable. We are all so dateable. That's what we learned from our book tour. So everyone is very dateable.
I love when people ask us, they're like, what does it mean to be dateable? And we're always like, you're already dateable. It's modern dating. That's fucking you. But being dateable doesn't always mean that you're relationship ready, though.
Yeah.
There is a difference, I think.
Yes. And I, for the longest time, thought they were the same.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that if I was good at dating, then I was ready for a relationship.
I think everyone's inherently dateable, like they could be dated, but you kind of have to unlock and release some parts of you that make you relationship ready.
And sometimes you may not want to be in a relationship. But we just feel like we're always ready for a relationship. Not always the case. Definitely a point in my life where I thought I was ready and I thought I wanted a relationship when all signs were pointing to no.
Oh, yeah. I remember like when I was entertaining a situationship for 2 years and my best friend being like, I think if you were really serious about a relationship, this wouldn't be interesting to you.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's someone that is clearly not committing. It's someone that was literally hitting me up when we were like out with friends, not making any effort at all. If I was serious and committed to a relationship, that behavior would have been completely unexcusable to me. But I think at that stage of life, my expectations for what a relationship were different.
And even like, I remember just wanting a boyfriend.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean a relationship.
No.
That's very different.
That's the key. Like, I remember like this guy, particularly like him being like, I don't want a relationship. And now I look back and I'm like, that was valid. The fact that he said that, like, I should have taken that at face value and moved on. And I remember talking to a friend of mine because I was just like so confused, like, why wouldn't he want a relationship? Doesn't everyone want a relationship? And she's like, look, relationships do require work, like even as little as, okay, I need to account for you for dinner and wait till you get home in order to eat. Some people just want to eat whatever they want to eat and not think about another human being. And that's valid.
So do you think that it's worth asking someone on a first date what they're looking for? Because my issue with this is that guy you spoke to had a lot of clarity. I'm not sure if most people have the clarity around what they're looking for.
No, I think one of the most wasteful questions is, what are you looking for? Or are you looking for a relationship?
Yeah.
Because what does that actually mean? Like, what does that relationship entail?
Yeah.
To one person, it could be seeing someone once a week, and the other, it's like spending every waking moment together. I think you might be able to remove the extreme cases from that. I think also sometimes people think like it's not socially acceptable to say what they really are looking for. Like, let's say they are looking for a hookup. If they tell you that, are you going to now not want to hook up with them? Because, you know, they're not supposed to want that. Like, they're supposed to be like on the relationship track, and it might actually be a better way to hook up with you, opposed to being like, I'm only here for a hookup.
I think that's why that app Field is doing so well, is because people feel the freedom to say that they're looking for a hookup or a third or something outside their marriage or relationships. But on these traditional apps, you're right. I think there's some underlying pressure or expectation that everyone's on there to look for a serious relationship.
Right, like more heteronormative traditional dating.
Yeah.
I mean, I think personally asking questions around just, do they have the capacity for a relationship? How do they integrate other people into their lives, even friends and family members? It's really helpful to like get a feel. And just because they're like making time for friends all the time doesn't mean that they're relationship ready. That could actually mean the opposite if they're just so ingrained in like partying and going out with their friends all the time. To me, that would be information to know. And it's not like one answer means go, they're ready for a relationship, but it allows you to have that starting point where you can dig in a little more and see like, okay, what would a relationship look like with this person? Are they like hanging out with friends all the time because they just want to party and go out? Or are they hanging out with friends all the time because their friendships are so deep to them and meaningful and they value relationships? You could get very different answers from the same answer.
I think this is why we're so confused. I think about a really close guy friend of mine who was so ready for a serious relationship, but he thought in order to attract as many women as possible on the apps, he needed these photos of him partying.
Right.
Because it showed this social fun side of him. So he had all these like topless photos of him in Vegas, double fisting and like, you know, carrying red cups around. But then he was always like, I just want to find someone to have a relationship with. I'm so ready to commit. And I'm like, dude, look at your photos. Your photos say otherwise. But he really thought he had to portray himself in a certain way just to get people to like him.
Well, that's why we can't make assumptions. Like, we really need to ask and have conversations. It's interesting because we were on this YouTube live the other day with Jonathan Asley, who's a big YouTuber in the relationship space. And it was funny because before we got on, he was like, oh, I have a little differing opinion to you all. I love to push people to interrogate their dates, to really get all the information. I think when he said interrogate, he was like half kidding, but we were just like, oh God. You know, that is not, in our opinions, the best way to move to connection. But we also agree with him that it's not like you should ask nothing and just fall into relationships. It's how do you ask these questions in a way that you learn information, but you're not like grilling someone for the answer you want to hear.
I also think the apps make it really confusing as well because the apps make you answer, what are you looking for?
Yeah.
But they're so binary. It's like long-term relationship, friends, or casual relationship. I wonder if it makes more sense. We should tell the apps this. If there's like a slider.
Yeah.
And it's like, how much effort are you willing to put into a relationship? So it can be on a sliding scale.
I love that. I think that's such a good idea, but I get why they did it because for a long time you'd hear people be like, well, people just want to hook up. They want to do whatever. And I want to know that they're looking for it. But I think about the conversation we had with Leon, one of our most hated guests ever.
Oh, boy.
Remember, he would always say that he wanted a relationship, even though he wanted to just hook up with people and leave them the next day. And again, it's like, well, people saying what they do is not always aligned. And clearly, if they give you like a hard no, like, I don't want to be in a relationship, I'm not ready, that's amazing information to know. But I'd say 99% of people are not even sure themselves. It's not even that they're like withholding info. A lot of times they just truly don't know where they're at.
So for all of you listening, Have you ever wondered, are you relationship ready? What does that even mean? Or how can you assess if the person you're dating is relationship ready in a world where there's all this conflicting advice and information?
This is such a good topic. I honestly cannot wait to dive into it. Before we do, though, if you haven't yet, what are you waiting on? How to be dateable? Go pick it up. Our book is out everywhere. I had some friends that have been listening to the audiobook on top of reading the book, and they were just saying, like, one of them was like, oh, I didn't realize you guys narrated it. I'm like, really? She was very pleasantly surprised that we were the narrators. And I think the audiobook brings a whole different dimension to all the content in here, in addition to reading the physical book.
And there's some slight differences between print and audio, and you won't know until you pick up both. So you'll see.
Okay. Before we get into the episode, then, let's take a minute to hear from our sponsor. So why is being relationship ready important? Obviously for yourself, but also for finding someone else who is too.
It comes back to intentionality. It's not a given. It's not our default setting to be relationship ready. So there is some intentionality and mindset around being relationship ready.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to ask the right things and to learn about someone, because ultimately it can be heartbreaking if you feel like someone is ready for a relationship and they choose not to be. Mm-hmm. And we're not saying that like you can protect yourself from every heartbreak that happens. Sometimes someone might think they're relationship ready and you might think they are too. And with time, they realize they're not as they get into it with you, or vice versa. But the more information we can glean up front by asking the right types of questions and paying attention to actions, that can set us up for maybe potentially less heartbreak.
And we noticed we've had some conversations, and also with some of you who came to our events in the last few weeks, is that we tend to fall into relationships. And then we wonder 6 months down the line why it's not working, or how did this even happen? And it comes from that upfront work that we didn't do, because there needs to be some clarity around why you want to be in a relationship in the first place. And that's why one of my favorite chapters in our book is Gaining Clarity, because it helps you answer that question, which then provides the direction of where you want to go with a relationship.
Being ready in a relationship is so important to give you that baseline for your whole relationship also. Like if I look back to the times that I thought I was ready for a relationship but was not, I don't think I would have been able to navigate like any conflict that came up or any miscommunication. I just didn't have a foundation because I hadn't done that inner work that got me to that place that I was truly ready.
And being ready for that work.
Yeah.
Being willing to put in the work, being mentally there for that. It's really important to understand, but I think it's really hard to grasp when you're not in a relationship, to be like, yeah, I'm going to put in the work. Yeah, I'm going to do this. But do you actually understand the time and effort it takes? And also just like the physical readiness too, meaning like, are you able to carve out time? Do you have the energy? I mean, there was a point in my life where I didn't even have energy for myself. How was I able to carve out the energy for anybody else in my life?
Well, I remember like one of my friends asking me when I was like in my 20s and thinking I was ready for a relationship, but was not at all. And them asking me like, oh, why do you want a relationship? And my answer was so they could go out with me and my friends. And I'm like, not kidding. That was my answer. And looking back on it, it's so clear that I wasn't really looking for a partner in life. I was looking to not be the left out person. It was about my own like ego and not feeling like I was falling behind or different than the other people, more than the actual desire to even connect with another person.
But even you saying that now, knowing that it's different from a relationship, that takes a lot of self-awareness and growth to get there. So even having the courage to say that, like, I just want someone to hang out with me and my friends, that's step number one. But then step number two is, what does that actually translate to?
Yeah. And I know for me, a pivotal point was when I was like, I actually do want to share my life with someone. I want to build a life with someone. Even the level above sharing it is I want to create something new with this person, not just incorporate them into my own life.
Exactly. I have a friend who recently got married. She's been married for 6 months. And they've been off and on dating for like 5 years, she said.
Oh, wow.
I was like, oh, how's married life going? And she's like, oh, I have to think about our relationship differently. I'm like, why? What is different? So she said they have opposite schedules. And when her husband comes home and it's like, he'll bring lunch for himself. But she said when they were dating, she didn't think that was a big deal. But now that they're married, she's like, he should be thinking about me and also bring food home for me. And it was like mind-boggling for me because I'm like, there shouldn't be a difference. It's like when you're in a relationship with someone, this is what we're talking about with that emotional and mental availability. It's like you have to create that space for the other person you're sharing life with. And it's not just about you're committed in a marriage versus not. Like you have to think about someone else all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I think availability is probably like the number one thing to me of like what makes someone relationship ready. I mean, first of all, they need to be available in terms that they're not with someone else unless you have a predefined poly arrangement that you're going after. I think the other piece, though, is that they can't be necessarily hung up on an ex or their mind is elsewhere, because I've been that person at times that I'm like, I'm single, but am I really if I'm always thinking about someone else or even letting them back in and out of my life? That to me, that makes it really hard to actually build a real relationship with someone if you have floating people and you're not fully available.
Yeah, I always say to my friends, you got to clear the roster. When you're ready to clear the roster, you're probably ready for a relationship. And there was a point in my life I was not willing to do that. I still needed the riffraff around me. I still needed the every once in a while text messages from random dudes that I met out because I needed that attention and validation around me. But that's not a good foundation for a relationship. So it's like, are you ready to clear all those people that aren't going to be in a relationship with you?
I feel like we get this comment all the time of like, oh, what's wrong with having the friends with benefits in the background? Like I can still look and date. And it's like, no, like it really does get into your mental space and people can feel it. I think people can feel when there's other people in your orbit.
Absolutely. Yeah, you feel like when you're a number or you're just part of a lineup. Like we can all feel that energy.
And also, like speaking from experience, when I had people floating, I felt less like compelled to like really take risks with new people and put myself out there fully, because I was also like always comparing them to these other people that I probably had more foundation with, actually, even though it wasn't a healthy foundation. It was longer and more of that, like, you know, in my head feeling of love to them that probably wasn't justified, but got ahead of myself. So I feel like I wasn't even setting up this new person for success and to be evaluated in a fair way because I was always like comparing to these other people.
And it prevents you from going deeper with someone. I used to think like, okay, if this connection doesn't really work, I have someone else lined up. But the only connections that do work are the ones that you commit to going deeper with.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you strike that balance? Not thinking about the next, but going deeper.
And I think even if both people are single as fuck, like they have no one in their lineup, if you're not open though and available to making room for someone fully, like I was saying earlier, of planning your dinners around someone else at a bare minimum, or basically accounting for this other person, that's a form of not being available also.
Yes. Related to availability is also like having that openness in yourself for more growth and more self-awareness, because being in a relationship will open up a whole other can of worms about you that maybe sometimes we're not ready to face. And so if you come in with a more open, growth-minded mindset, then it's more about what am I learning in this relationship versus being defensive.
Well, I think self-awareness is key, that you need to know your own needs and values and boundaries and communicate them, because I feel like for years I was in this place that I didn't even know what my needs were. So I would just kind of like feel resentment, or I wouldn't be able to talk about them and state them. So I think step one is even knowing what that is. And again, all the people out there, we have this all for you in our Gaining Clarity chapter in the book. All outlined. But more importantly, once you know it, it's actually taking action. Because I think if you're self-aware, that's step one. It's important, but you have to do something with that information. It can't just be like, I shut down during conflict. but you have to be like working towards, okay, I recognize this and I'm working on communicating even when it's uncomfortable.
The trend we keep seeing with self-awareness, because we've become so fucking self-aware in the last decade with all these tests and assessments and attachment styles, is that people get in the mindset of, well, this is who I am.
Right.
This is just who I am. I'm not going to change. Now you know who I am. I know who I am. But we're saying to be ready for a relationship, you have the self-awareness, but also the openness to change and openness to grow and evolve. And it's not just about being like so strong in who you are. All my mavericks out there, I'm taking the quiz, so you know what I'm talking about. But saying, I know who I am today, but I'm also willing to explore who I could be tomorrow.
And that goes into, I think, one of the other green flags of someone's relationship ready is that they're whole on their own, but they're open to letting someone in. So they're secure in themselves. They're already happy with their lives. Like, I think when people are just so, I hate using the word desperate, but that's what's like coming to mind, but just like that's the center of the universe is finding a relationship. It almost feels like a void to like fill something else. I think when people are really relationship ready, it tends to be that breaking moment of like, okay, if I'm single, my life is pretty freaking good and I'm okay with that. That tends to be when we see people actually get into relationships once they've hit that point that they feel good about the life that they're in currently, and they're not looking for someone to save them. They're just looking for someone additive to their life.
That's how you felt during COVID, right?
It was 100%.
Because you were like, well, if life is like this by myself, it's pretty damn good.
I feel like for you too, after your relationship, you just were like, I'm going to go refine myself and love my life and build up my own life. Like, it wasn't like, let me go date and find a replacement for the person that left.
Yes. It's like no longer about, I need a relationship to survive. It's about, okay, I'm open to having someone in my life. And I'm open to carving out a place for someone else in my life, but I certainly don't need that to be happy. And according to the Gottmans, they've done several studies around what determines the success of a relationship. And it's always personal well-being.
Yeah.
That is the number one indicator. If both parties are individually happy in their own lives, then their relationship will be that much more healthy.
Well, you're not looking at a relationship to fix you at that point.
Yeah.
And you're capable of actually giving and receiving love in a healthy way. I think that's the key, though, is to have this like clear sense of self, but not be so set in your ways that you can't let anyone in. And I think that's actually, you can really glean that even from early dating of just how happy someone is with their life. But also, do they have availability to meet up with you? Do they seem to be incorporating you? Or are they just too busy to do anything and too like independent and on their own to ever seek out, you know, that extra companionship and relationship? You also don't want someone that has so much free time and has no life of their own and is giving up their hobbies and canceling on their friends last minute to go on dates, because that just shows that dating is now the center of their life. I almost feel like decentering dating a bit and living a full life with dating as part of it is a way more like healthy way to attract that person.
Yeah. And like in a really non-romantic way, when I think about relationships, is being with someone who's willing to problem solve with you.
Yeah.
That's a lot of what relationships are about.
It really is.
And that takes a certain level of emotional maturity too. And this is not something you can just ask someone like, are you emotionally mature?
No.
Like
everyone's gonna be like, yeah, I am.
Yeah, of course. I'm so mature.
Yeah.
The way I've seen this with my previous partners, even to see if I'm emotionally mature, is always around conflict. How do we rupture and repair? That is like the cycle that determines how emotionally mature both people are.
I will always go back to that conversation that we had with Connor Beaton and Vienna Farron about what makes a healthy relationship. We had this entire list of topics that we want to cover, and we just hit conflict. That's all we talked about. And ultimately, Connor said something of like, find someone you can do conflict with.
Yeah.
Because it's inevitable. It's going to happen. And that's why we always say, like, you know, it's not too early to have conflict. I think that the word conflict is wildly misunderstood. It feels like fights or something. Conflict could just be like a miscommunication. It could be a different expectation. Like if someone, isn't texting you when you wanted them to, or isn't making the next date, you could take something like, oh, this person isn't getting back to me in a timely manner and blow up at them, not emotionally mature.
Yeah.
Or you could say to them like, hey, I've been really enjoying getting to know you and going out, and I'm just a little confused, like, what's going on here? I'd love to talk further, or whatever you want to say. I think that's a very different approach than like yelling at someone and accusing them of being like a bad person because they didn't text you back.
Exactly. What I've learned from all the conflicts that I've had in a healthy relationship is there's a fine balance between being able to evolve and be open to a different way of doing things or different expectations.
Yeah.
But also protecting yourself so that you are not compromising your needs.
Right.
And one thing that I've noticed is we have a lot of people pleasers out there who think conflict is about bending backwards or pretzeling yourself to fit into what someone's asking for. But we're saying emotional maturity really comes from being able to mold, but also standing strongly in what you stand for, your values, and what you believe to be important to you.
And someone's reaction is so telling too. If they like shut down or become defensive and they just won't have it, or they gaslight you and they make you feel like your feelings are not viable, I think that to me is one of the biggest red flags that someone is not capable of a long-term relationship. I certainly don't want that.
No, yeah. If you are walking on eggshells, afraid of saying your truth, afraid to be authentically who you are, then this is not a healthy relationship. Or if you feel like when you are in conflict with someone and the first thing you want to do is tell your friends about it or ask them for advice, that's also problematic. We've been saying this on many previous episodes. When you are in conflict with your partner, go to your partner first before you go to your friends.
In our book, too, we have the only 7 things that matter when deciding if to continue to invest in someone. And at the top is consistency. I still feel so strongly about this because I really believe like if that's not there, nothing else matters. And ultimately, too, with consistency, when you have that, when you're not focused on all of like the questions and texting your friends if you think they like you or not, or getting those butterflies because you're unsure, that's when you actually can develop a relationship and develop the connection, because you're not spending your time analyzing text messages and doing all the things that you do when you're just like unsure. You're actually communicating and talking and spending quality time with the person you're dating.
And it just means there's no game playing. No game playing is needed to start and maintain a relationship. We hope that is so clear to everyone.
Yeah.
There's no need to have the upper hand. No need to make sure that they still stay interested. When you have consistent behavior, that creates a safe place for you to be who you are.
And ultimately, too, when you're relationship ready, you are actually not afraid to be vulnerable. And being vulnerable means putting yourself out there. We see people playing relationship chicken and not really getting into relationships when they're not vulnerable, and they're afraid to feel like they've lost, or to feel like they're not good enough because someone didn't like them back and I need to protect my heart. Being vulnerable is willing to trust and be trusted and to take that leap. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay, but you're still putting yourself out there and taking that risk.
Speaking for all my mavericks out there, for so long, I equated vulnerability to weakness. I don't want to show that weakness to the people I'm dating. I still can recall this conversation I had with this guy I've been seeing for a few months, and I couldn't ask for a commitment. I just felt like that would be too weak to do that. So what I ended up saying was, I'm ready to be the entree, not the appetizer.
Oh my God.
And he's like, okay. And then I was like, I think this is over. And like, I just tapped out, like, I'm ready to be the entree. If I were to rehash that conversation now, it would be, I'm ready to give you more commitment in this relationship. And I hope to receive the same amount of commitment. Are you willing to do that? Like, that would be me today being more vulnerable. But It all comes from protecting our hearts and trying not to get hurt.
Yeah.
But as a result, I never actually said what I wanted to say.
Right. And I think the last, real sign of relationship readiness is this feeling that someone is committed. And it's that they understand that relationships require effort and adjustments and sometimes even sacrifices. I think asking people like their views on what a relationship looks like to them and understanding if it's not just, the rainbows and butterflies part of relationships, I think that is such a testament to how relationship ready they are. I'm thinking back on our conversation that we did last week with Diego, aka Young Pablo, for many of you that know his pen name. And a big piece of this was how there's this false perception of what being in a relationship is. And when people can't see the many sides that aren't always great, the days that are hard, that makes someone not really relationship ready. Again, it becomes what we were talking about earlier. They want to be the boyfriend or girlfriend or even the fiance or husband and wife, but they don't want to do the work required in a relationship.
I find that when we say the word commitment, most people go to, not cheating.
Yeah.
I'm committed because I'm not with other people.
Or just defining the relationship at all.
But the commitment here is active.
Yeah.
It's actively committing to make this relationship work. So it's something to think about, but something that we're all learning.
I mean, I'll give my partner so much credit because there were times that things got hard and just conflicts we were having. And I feel he was just always committed to making it work, to finding a way to move forward. At times that honestly pushed me sometimes. And I feel I was oh my God, I'm almost a little challenged here. And is this too much for me? And there were obviously times that it was reversed as well. But I think both of us have been able to step up in times when maybe the other one needed it.
Yes.
And I think that to me has been a sign of this is the right person. Because in the past, I feel people would have just been okay, we're done. Let's give up. Let's move on.
Yeah. Too much work. On to the next. Something easier.
It's hard too when you've had a string of those because I feel I was kind of almost feeling that was what was going to happen because that's what had happened so many times prior.
Gosh, all of this, I think it's because you got me on White Lotus season 2 that I keep thinking about the couple.
I was shocked that you hadn't watched White Lotus. I'm are you the only person in
I might be the only
the world?
person.
But I was start at season 2, skip season 1, and then you'll be with us.
And I can't even think of their names right now, but you know what I'm talking about. The couple that keeps playing games with each other.
Oh,
they
yeah.
really should not be married at all. And they're just such a great example of a couple that has none of these qualities because all they do is play games with each other, don't communicate. And I love that they start the season with them saying, we don't fight. We're just a couple that doesn't fight.
Right.
And Aubrey Plaza, Harper, the other character, she's like, that's weird.
Yeah.
What couple doesn't fight?
I think, though, if you're thinking this is a lot for someone to have, it goes back to the settling paradox, right? That we're overemphasizing certain qualities that don't matter at the sacrifice of the things that really matter in building a relationship. So it's not to say, okay, now I have my list. Now I got to add all this stuff on. It's how do we reprioritize what actually matters?
Yeah.
We're not saying people have to be perfect in all of this. It's the biggest green flag of all is the willingness to grow. When you hear one, if you're oh, maybe I'm not that yet, or the person I'm dating isn't quite there, it doesn't mean that I should never be in a relationship or let me abandon this relationship, but it's an area to work on. It's an area to pay attention to. For me personally, I still struggle a little with emotional regulation. I think I've come a long way in emotional maturity as a whole, and I think it's a huge asset of mine, but sometimes it's hard for me to regulate my emotions, and it's something I'm proactively working on because it is hard.
So maybe if you are listening to this and you're in a newer relationship with someone, it's worth listening to this episode with them.
Yeah.
And talk about the areas that you are individually working on and the areas that you want to work on together. Because I think it's really important to understand this is an evolution of your relationship. This is dynamic. Things are constantly changing, but Every quality needs a little love at some point in time.
I think this hopefully has given light into some of the real key areas to look out for. Before we get into some maybe red flags to look out for, let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. So Yue, to you, if you were to date today, what would be some of the biggest red flags, like real red flags you would want to look out for that would make someone feel like maybe not relationship ready to you?
One thing that I always look out for is how someone talks about their previous relationships and their previous partners. And if I still sense anger or resentment, then I know that there's some unresolved issues that I can't be part of because they're probably going to bring that into our relationship. And it's that baggage that I can handle all kinds of other baggage, but that's the emotional baggage of previous relationships I can't deal with.
I think the other one for me is lack of accountability. It kind of goes into what I was talking about of poor communication, but accountability is everything. Like if you do something, own it. Don't try to deflect it or blame me or others. I think you can also really glean this early on if someone just can't own their shit at all. It's always someone else's fault. It's always someone else to blame. Being able to acknowledge mistakes or, anything that shows accountability is like a huge sign of relationship readiness. And when someone is making excuses for their behavior, it feels like a huge red flag.
And it shows that they are lacking the openness for growth, which is another one for me. It's like, I want to be in a relationship because I want to grow and expand as much as I can. And if I'm with a partner who feels like they know it all already, that they're always right, and that they've already done all the work, they've already done all the therapy and the workshops and the assessments, then I can't be with someone who feels like they've already reached their capacity for growth.
I think the very last one for me, I'm thinking of like emotional instability. If they're just like hot and cold and you never know what you're going to get, they have mood swings. That was something I like really made sure to look for someone that was a little more even tempered. Also, if there's like extreme dependency, like I want someone that obviously like needs me and wants to be with me, but I don't want to be like their only happiness or they blame me if they're unhappy, like codependency.
I think a lot of people want to be the center of their partner's life, to be their only source of happiness. But I agree with you. If you are everything to your partner, then that means that they haven't created a life for themselves.
Right. I mean, obviously they have a fulfilling life, but I think the part of it that really gets me is like if they're not feeling happy, they think it's because of their partner. Not like, again, taking accountability that like someone else can't dictate their happiness.
Well, that's a red flag for all of us to see in ourselves too. When you feel like, someone's not making you happy or someone is making you happy, that shows signs that there's a little dependency, because nobody can truly make you happy or unhappy.
Really not. Okay, so if you're feeling like, again, I have a lot of this going on for me, but I'm not quite there. First of all, you can get your relationship readiness score that we have on our website, actually. We'll link it in the show notes as well. So this will help you like kind of figure out like where there could be areas to build up that relationship readiness. I would look at like the specific area that we outlined too. And where do you feel like I need a little more? Like, for instance, I mentioned earlier an example of like emotional regulation to like help with conflicts and that. Like, I think by honing in on that even more, it'll help me get to that next level of being like, a better partner and better to myself.
I love this quiz, by the way. Who doesn't love a good quiz? But it does show you what could be holding you back to be in a relationship. And I think for me, it's always been about communication skills. Like being an only child, I have only communicated with parental / authority figures in my life. And I don't quite know how to speak to peers in the way that feels open and that feels kind and compassionate. So I'm still working on that. And I know that this is going to be a lifetime learning for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of this too, not to like toot our own horn with the book, but the second half of the book is going to help you become a lot more relationship ready, regardless of where you are today. The first section of that book, like we have it in a framework, and the first piece is letting go. Shout out to one of our moderators, Tony, who wrote in the Facebook group how much he's digging this chapter. But it's really like letting go of the past, processing past relationships, or even just like the perceptions you've had about yourself and love and the way that you go about relating to others and healing that past baggage. Because without letting go, you're coming in so heavy. And that really is the first step in our opinions.
And then you can do a lot of the self-work. Yes, there's a lot of self-work you can do. We've seen all the resources that have come through in the last few decades, but we're also saying that you kind of need someone else to reflect this back at you.
Totally.
A lot of this, like emotional regulation, I think it's an interesting point you bring up, because I've been reading a lot about how there's emotional regulation individually, but there's also emotional regulation with a partner. They're two very different things.
Yeah.
And you can be working on both at the same time, but working on that emotional regulation with a partner can't be done alone.
Hopefully this was helpful for people. I know this is a lot of information, but maybe it's even listening a couple times over. But I really think this is so important to be focused on these types of qualities of what makes someone relationship ready to, one, become that person yourself, but also to like look out for this stuff when you're dating, not the stuff that we are all looking out for today of like the red flag if they wear a weird belt or not. Who cares? The red flag should be like, do they take accountability?
Yeah, the things that actually matter. This is why I think this is such a great episode to share with your partner or with your friends.
Yep.
So you can have deeper discussions around like keeping each other accountable for the things that you're working on. And it's not about being 100% ready, but it's knowing what are the areas you can focus more attention on. And that's why the relationship readiness score on our website will give you a lot more clarity around those areas.
Yeah, dateablepodcast.com/programs. You can get the score. It's free. Also, no one's going to be 100%. No one is ever going to be 100% ready, and that's okay. It's more like, are you on the path, the right path, and willing to address and grow? And then, of course, relationship readiness, foundation of our book, How to Be Dateable. Make sure to go get it if you haven't yet. Audiobook or hardcover or Kindle. There's so many different ways to digest all this information. And like we mentioned, that second half of the book is going to do wonders to help you become the most dateable and relationship ready that you possibly can be.
And we want to hear from you. Why don't you leave us a 5-star rating and review in Apple Podcasts? And in the body of your review, you can tell us what are the areas you're working on to become relationship ready. We really, really want to know.
Awesome. Well, this has been such a fun episode. I love doing the duos of just the two of us.
We never run out of things to say, do we?
No, we don't.
All right, we're going to wrap up this episode. Stay dateable.
Wow.
What's up?
I just bought and financed a car through Carvana in minutes.
You? The person who agonized 4 weeks over whether to paint your walls eggshell or off-white bought and financed a car in minutes?
They made it easy. Transparent terms, customizable down and monthly. Didn't even have to do any paperwork.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Hey, have you checked out that spreadsheet I sent you for our dinner options?
Finance your car with Carvana and experience total control. Financing subject to credit approval.